Okay, this is Jacob Schmidt with deerhuntingschool.com, looking at a property here. Nihad, thank you for letting me take a look at this. The time of year that you're going to be hunting this here um, is a time where deer are really stressed for food and stuff. There's not a lot of food, and that's going to be that's going to be key, very, very seriously key. I don't know what kind of weather conditions it you guys are having. We're having unseasonably warm weather, big time, with a bunch of rain in that same time frame that you're talking about hunting. Um, so what you have whenever it's warmer in the winter, deer will concentrate a lot on the more greenery stuff, and the thing is, there's not a lot of it. When it's super cold, they'll concentrate in on stuff with higher carbohydrates, because they have to have that to burn, in their body to keep them warm. So keeping that in mind, deer can switch from one day to the next on food patterns. But one thing that I have in my one of my online courses, it's a mapping course. It's called Mapping Deer in a Deer Hunting Area or something like that. I'm going to kind of briefly talk about it just a little bit here. The importance of it. If I can figure out basically what you'll have, especially when you do when you start scouting and stuff, what you're going to have is you're going to have deer that'll bed in certain areas, okay? And then they're going to feed in areas. Now this is what I'm drawing as it has nothing to do with the layout. I just want to explain something. I was talking with you on the phone, kind of explaining it, but I want to explain it here so that you can get a good grasp of it, what I'm talking about. And then you may have an area over here where they feed. Okay, now these are going to switch all throughout the year. The bedding areas are going to stay the same a lot, unless someone goes in and disrupts the deer in there. They'll pretty much bed in the same areas. They will move some, especially if there's a dramatic change in the food sources, which does happen, but they're going to tend to be the same kind of habitat, the same kind of terrain for the most part. So one good way you can find that is, and I know you guys get a lot of snow, is when it snows or something, go out there and just find where deer trails where deer have been walking and just follow them back and forth. And you'll see where they've been bedded down, and then you'll see where they're traveling and stuff, and you'll be able to see where they've been eating. A lot of times in the snow, if it's not too deep, they'll well, even if it is deep, but they'll kind of dig for food and stuff a little bit, but you'll really learn a lot. And what happens is you say you have a bedding area here, and then you have a food source here, and then let's say you have a food source here. What you want to do when you're doing this is you want to mark, okay, and then you come back in and you map it on Google Earth. Here's what I'm using right now. Now this program that I'm drawing with you won't be able to use, but you can use some tools that Google Earth have right up here on top of the screen. You can put pyramids, lines, and stuff like that. But anyways, what you'll have deer bedding in a certain area, and then they'll come, and they'll browse. Deer are browsers. A lot of people think they'll just go into one spot and they feed, and that's not the case. They will actually pick up some food along the way, browsing, and then they'll have a preferred food source, and they'll feed in there, and then they'll kind of make a circle back, and that's usually how they run, kind of in a little circle. And you may have the same thing going on here. Now these food sources will change throughout the year. And what you want to do as you find your bedding areas, and okay, you want to mark them. Okay, I know deer have been bedding here. Let's say you were scouting middle of December. I know deer are bedding here in mid-December, and I know because I follow them on, their tracks that this is their route. A lot of deer are using this route here. And then you'll notice on food, when there's food sources, you'll have also deer that are coming from other directions. You'll have a central point, and that's how you can tell it's a food source. And then you'll have, like kind of look like satellite bedding areas all around it, if you have the habitat all around it. So you can actually mark this here and then label it on Google Earth so that you can see, real quick what time of year that these deer were feeding there. That is invaluable. You can put it over here, stuff over here. I don't know what I just done. I hit the wrong button. You can put it over here where you can see, for instance, let me just show you, like right here, like I have right here, mid-November, food source. What else do I have? Mid-October food sources. I should have some December food sources somewhere. But anyways, you get the point right there. You can label when these food sources are available, and after you do this for a few years, it's almost like, hey, I can go kill a deer almost at any time you want, especially if you're using a gun. And the reason I say especially for a gun, because you get a lot more distance, you can cover a lot more distance, and you can pick holes a lot tighter, shooting lanes with a gun than you can a bow. So anyways, you will, that's what I was explaining to you on the phone, and I hope that makes sense to you. If not, you can email me. I'll explain it to you better. But or get the mapping a deer and deer hunting area, my online course, and it'll explain it in great detail. I actually show the whole process of how I do that and why it's so important. And I even talk about food sources changing a little bit throughout the year, because they will change. Deer are not going to feed on the same food. Usually they're not going to feed on the same food in the summer that they do in the dead winter. Now they will have, there will be spots that they feed in the summer. I mean, there's food everywhere in the summer. And as you get to this time frame we're in right now in the dead of winter, the food gets very scarce. Now, obviously, the available food sources in the winter was there in the summer, so deer could be keying in on it in the summer, but they will have went through several different food sources, preferred food sources they're using. This time of year, you're either going to have some type of food plot, a clear cuts work really good, because of the browse in there, really thick areas, honeysuckle, American privet, briar, saw briars, any type of briar is real good. Any really young trees, that's one reason clear cuts are really good, because you have a lot of, when I say clear cuts, I mean clear cuts that are 1 to 2 years old up to about 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10, maybe a little older. But anyways, younger clear cuts, to where they're actually growing back. You'll have young trees and stuff. These young trees will have buds on them. Deer will eat the buds off of them. That's greenery. They have to have, some form of greenery. They'll eat the sticks, the soft ends of the trees and stuff off. Now, when you look at an area like this here, you look and you'll see that there are areas that are more apt to have this type of food that deer can get to. Now, when you look and you see like this right here, a lot of people, when they're looking for deer, they're looking for woods, big wooded areas. And deer do get in them, and this is an area that they possibly could bed in. But there's not going to be very much food here in the wintertime. I can almost guarantee you that. These trees, there's very few limbs that are going to be, under 8 foot tall. They're going to have to be under 6 foot, really, for deer to be able to really get to them as a food source. They're going to have to be, 4 and 5 foot, 3 foot, 2 foot, that kind of range. Anything over 6 foot is going to be they're going to spend more energy getting to the food than they are being able to eat the food. Now, one thing a lot of people, excuse me, my throat. One thing I think a lot of people overlook is the fact that deer set up a home range. And it's usually within a square mile. And they don't abandon that home range very often. They pretty much stay in there. So within a square mile, there's going to be somewhere that these deer are concentrated feeding, if there's any amount of deer per square mile. Now there's some areas, very few anymore in the country, that have 5 to 10 deer per square mile. It's not very many areas like that anymore, but there are a few, and in them cases they're maybe not quite as concentrated. But most places now in the United States that have white-tailed deer anyways, there are quite a bit more deer than that per square mile. And usually in this time of year, when you see deer, you see several deer. You don't, a lot of times early in the year, you might see 1 or 2 deer at a time, and usually this time of year when you see deer, you can see 10, 15, 20 deer at a time. Usually a lot of times you'll see 5. Sometimes you see 1 deer, but most of the time you see quite a few deer, and the reason for that is they're concentrated on food sources. There's not much food. So when you're looking at this area for late winter, these areas here, and I mean this is a big area. This is the me and you had talked on the phone. This was the other area. When I was looking at it on the map, I couldn't find it until you sent me the map. This is the one area that we had talked about that's up north of that one city, and I'll put it in the email so you know. I don't want to say it right here because everybody's going to see it because it's on YouTube. But this is the other piece of public land. Okay, so this area here, you just don't have much food. Okay, now that doesn't mean that there's not any deer here, because if you take a look, let me switch colors here. If you take a look, you've got this whole entire creek bottom here that runs down through here that's got some good looking habitat on it. It's got a lot of good looking browse stuff on it to me. Maybe not this brown area, but now this picture was took in 2013 too, by the way. So that could be a field that they planted in corn and for some reason are not in harvesting or whatever. So you're going to have some browse up through here. You're not going to have much here. It's just not much for the deer here. And you definitely late this time of year, late in the deer season, when there's not a lot of food, you definitely want to be keying in on a food source. I would definitely be hunting, especially what your goals are just to kill a deer. I would definitely be hunting any type of food source I could find. And that's going to be in this general area right here. It's going to be on this creek on the edges of these fields. Now, if for say this was a food plot, maybe somebody had some rye in there, or maybe they planted some soybeans and left it standing, or maybe it was corn that they left standing, then you would have a high concentration of deer on that. Any type of agriculture, any food plots in this area that are left, that are growing, if you can find something like that, you're going to have a high concentration of deer around that. Now you may want to hunt the edges of that if it's an open area, because the deer may come out really late, but unless it's brutal cold, they may hold back. So anyways, by looking at this creek area is going to really look nice. I'm going to zoom in on it and show you what I'm actually seeing. And when I zoom in here, you can see that you see all these patches. Now this was took in September, and I'm going to roll it back here. There's one picture in late October here. Let's see. That's not it. That's August. It was actually a decent picture. That's June. You know what? This late October was the other area. Let me zoom out a little bit, see if I can't find a good picture. The other area I looked at, there was one good picture. But I actually like this area better. You'd ask me which area I like better. This one I like better. And it's split up. Well, I don't have a good winter picture of this spot. But I can tell you that when I look at this creek bottom, that you're going to have quite a few deer. What in the world just happened? Wow, I got on the other side of the mountain, or the hill. You're going to have quite a few deer in this area. Doggone, my mouse is messing up. Sorry, people. You're going to have quite a few deer in this area due to the fact that there's a lot of really low undergrowth type of stuff. If you take a look at this, like this particular area here, you have these taller trees and stuff, and then on this creek bank, you're going to have you got all this undergrowth that's growing up next to it. Oh, goodness, this stupid mouse. I apologize. My mouse is acting up on me. I'm going to just spin this thing around a little bit. Okay, you've got, like I said, all the undergrowth and stuff, the small stuff, plants that are growing within reach of a deer's mouth is what you have. I'm going to just kind of draw that here. I mean, this is pretty basic, but a lot of people overlook this and they don't think about it. You have these big tall trees, okay? A lot of people, matter of fact, they do this with oak trees. You got a big, huge, tall oak tree and it gets acorns on it, and people are just, I mean, they don't want to cut their oak trees. They think they're gold, and they are a certain time of year. But you have this big, massive oak tree, and that's not a very good picture, but just, we're going to say it's a tree, and these little dots are acorns, okay? And here's the ground, okay? And then you have this deer, okay, that's about that tall, about this tall, this deer is, okay? Now, the only time that deer can get to these acorns is when them things drop, because he's way down here and he can't climb trees, okay? So unless them acorns are dropping, this oak tree is providing him nothing at all, okay? Now, when you have an area like we're looking at here that's all in the screen, we have these trees, but then you have a lot of plants and stuff that are growing, you know, stuff like this, okay? Now, obviously, they're going to have a lot more food in the summer than they do in the winter, but if you look at how tall them are, if this was our deer, if it was a good drawing, you know, forgive the drawing, but the deer can get his mouth on this stuff, whether it's a doe, a buck, a yearling, whatever, doesn't matter. The deer can actually put its mouth on it, and that's what you have here in all this, is you have a lot of habitat that deer can get their mouth on. Now, this area here is not going to do any good. It's not going to do the deer any good, because you have this big, huge, massive canopy that's shaded everything out. So everything underneath this is dead. There's nothing but leaves here, and there may be a few smaller trees, but there's nothing for the deer to eat on unless there's acorns dropping. Okay, that's why logging is so good and it's so important for deer, because when these trees are cut out, it allows that sunlight in, and that sunlight penetrates that dirt, and that dirt has new growth comes up, and deer can feed on that stuff. That's what you have here on all this short. It looks like a CRP almost in a way, type stuff. Okay, that's exactly what you have. Is you have an area that is short grown stuff, where these deer can get their mouths on the food. Now, looking at this, I'm sure that there are areas that some of this stuff is taller. You know, like here, this is definitely a tree line right through right here. This is definitely a tree line right that runs right through here of taller trees. But then along this creek, this stuff right here, that's food deer can feed on in the winter. And when you have deer concentrating, and you may have 10, 15, 20, 30 deer, easing through an area, they don't just come right here and feed right here. They'll actually kind of mingle around, and they'll feed, their way kind of around. They just kind of wander a little bit when they're browsing like that. Okay. So I would definitely key in on this area here. Okay. And then if you look, you have an area like right here. I would definitely take a look at these areas. Anywhere along this creek, it's just like that. They're just good looking young plants. I say young plants, short plants that deer can feed on. I would be looking at any of these fields too. This areas, both of these areas that we had talked about, you'd asked me which one I thought was better, and I actually thought the other one was better on the phone because I could not see this one. But I really like this one better, and the reason because the other one had just a whole bunch of woods, had just a bunch of this type of habitat here, these bigger trees and stuff, had just bunches of it. And this one's not so much. Okay, it doesn't have quite as much. Now, if you are hunting this, for multiple days, I wouldn't get locked in on just these areas. I would, at some point, if you could get up here and look at these fields, because I know these fields, part of these fields are on this property. There's some here. There's these here, this here, all this up in here that comes down there. I think this is. I think some of this is. This, and then this is the north part of it. Up right in here is the north part. I think there may be a little piece like right here. But if you could find any type of a food plot, of some type of food source like that, it's really going to be any of these fields were planted in corn that farmers or something left standing. Any of these fields are soybeans that haven't been harvested, or maybe there's corn that have been harvested, but there's some left over the ground that the combines didn't get. Or soybeans, same way. Anything like that. Maybe there's some rye fields, winter wheat. Any type of food like that is going to concentrate deer. Now, if they are something like that up here, what you're going to really look for is back off the edges where these deer are bedding. And when I look at this, I really think that you're going to have deer bedding on these hillsides, okay, especially your bucks, and you may actually kill deer on the side of these hills. And then I think they're really going to feed down in here a lot. Now if this is really thick where I just drew that circle, you're going to have deer bedding in there as well. But that's easy to get to. There's going to be people, I'm sure there's going to be people coming in and hunting this right off that road. And if they do, your bigger deer are really likely to get up on top of the side of this steep hill. And I'll tell you, I've been hunting a mountain, and them dang deer can walk up stuff that we can't hardly even get up. They can get up that, and it doesn't bother them, really doesn't. And I would show this on Topo. I looked at it on Topo. But this being a YouTube one, I don't show it on Topo because it shows the name of the road. It shows everything. But anyways, Now another area, I'm not sure that this is on the property, but if you look at this around this pond here, if this is on the, I'm going to just pause the video just a second and look. Okay, I looked, it's definitely on the pond. It's definitely on there. As a matter of fact, this property line runs plumb over here. It runs plumb back over here somewhere. So at some point, if I were you, I would definitely take a look at these fields to see if there's available food for deer in these big fields. If they are, that's something to really key in on. Now, and I'd already talked about how I would kind of go about that. As far as hunting it, I would hunt off the edges and stuff. Now, this pond here interests me for two reasons. One is if it's even somewhat dry, this thing is half a mile away. There's no water for half a mile almost anywhere else. Okay, any deer, if it's unseasonably warm, dry, whatever, any deer that's up in this area are not going to walk all the way over here to get water when there's water here. This is going to be a good watering hole. Now, I will say this, deer don't use ponds and stuff for water a whole lot. They don't need it, but they definitely do use it, especially when it's hot. Here in Arkansas early season, man, sometimes it might be in the mid-90s, and that's one reason I hunt ponds a lot. But I'll tell you another thing they use ponds for. It's kind of a congregation area for deer. They'll just, the area around it a lot of times is there's more deer activity around it than there are actually at the pond. And then when I zoomed in on this a little bit, I've seen this, I noticed that there's this undergrowth type stuff all around this pond. This kind of short CRP looking type of stuff, all around this pond here. I'm circling it right here. Okay. Obviously the field edge is right here. And there's multiple edges coming around this thing. So you have water, you have food. This should be pretty thick. You got cover. You've got this draw that runs right through the middle of it. You've got, oh my goodness, that's what I'm saying about my mouse. I'm trying to draw a circle like this and it just goes plumb up there somehow. But you have all this here. You've got all this right here. This is a good looking spot to me. Really an area that I would suspect quite a few deer around this area. Not just because of the pond, not just because they're going to come in here and get a drink out of the water. Now they will, at times, they will use that pond as a water source, especially when it's really dry. And one thing I think people misunderstand about about water sources is I've had deer come in, get a drink, and pouring down rain. And it's rained 3 inches in the past couple days, and deer will come in and use the pond while it's still raining. And they'll walk past 5 mud holes and water holes, just to get to the pond, even though they could get a drink anywhere. It's just habit for them. So, not to overwhelm you, because I know this is your first year hunting, Nihad. Nayad, I think you actually pronounce your name Nayad. This is your first year hunting, so I don't want to overwhelm you with the information, but I would key in around this pond, okay, and for several reasons. One, I do believe there's abundance of food around it, okay. Anytime deer have to have 3 things. I mean, it is a must. They have to have it, just like we do. We have to have food. We have to have water, and we have to have shelter. Deer have to have food, water, and cover, okay? And they have to have space to live, okay? And you've got the space. I mean, there's miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and of area for these deer, okay? So anytime you have all three things that they need, you're going to have deer, especially when they're in a tight area like they are around this pond. I hunt a lot of ponds inside clear cuts. And the reason, because you have food, water, and cover. You have the best cover usually available inside the clear cut, and then you have year-round food inside the clear cut, and then you have water. Now, a lot of times I'll see deer that don't come to the water hole, and it's because they're in a clear cut. I mean, clear cuts. When I say clear cuts, I don't mean a 1-year-old clear cut. I mean a 4 or 5-year-old clear cut. So let me rephrase that. I hunt a lot of ponds in 4-year and older clear cuts up to about 10 to 15 years old. Once they get about 10 or 15 years old, they somewhere in that time frame, maybe 18 years, depending on the growth rate of everything, they start going back to natural woods, and there's not a lot of food and cover in there. But anytime, you know, it's a young, real thick growth, a lot of plants that are short, deer can get their mouth on, you're going to have a lot of food. Even when, let's say, deer's favorite food, one of their favorite foods is white oaks. I mean, I think it's by far their favorite food is white oak. When the white oak acorns are dropping, deer will abandon food plots. They'll abandon soybean fields. They'll abandon all kinds of stuff if they're within their home range. Okay. But I'll tell you something they don't abandon, and that's these older clear cuts. They don't abandon them. They're still there. They're inside of them. They stay there all day long, even though the white oaks are dropping. So, you know, it's because there's year-round food, there's secure cover for these deer, and then if you have water in there, there's no reason for them to even leave it. Okay, so that's something to look for, and this is almost that. This is almost that. You've got year-round food around here. You've got water and you've got cover. Because I believe this is definitely grown up, and if you look at it, it almost looks like there's already deer trails just running all through this stuff. Right here looks like a concentration of them. You know, it looks like there's a concentration of deer trails. You know, running every which direction right here. And that wouldn't surprise me being in this draw, coming out of this draw. Okay, it wouldn't surprise me that there would be a concentration of deer trails there. So, like I said, without overwhelming you, I would concentrate around this because you have food, water, cover all in one area. And this is no different. This area here is no different. Okay, I would concentrate on that. Now, I would also be willing to adjust on the fly if I was, you know, coming up here and I seen there was a big dang cornfield here, you know, bumped right up against this wooded area or something. I would definitely, you know, key in on that and look for that. And remember, when you're looking for this stuff, and you're keep in mind that this here, deer will use the same habitat and the same food sources from one year to the next. And it's not that they're going to use, you know, say this right here, this food source from January to December. That's not the case. They may use this food source in November, okay, but then and I'm just drawing stuff here. I'm not, there's nothing to what's on the map. I'm just teaching you here. And then you may have a food source over here that they really key in on in December. And then you may have a food source over here that they really key in on October. Okay, that's actually supposed to be a D. It's hard to draw with a mouse if you've ever done it, by the way. So this is, you know, December, November, October. It's not that they're not going to feed in all three of these year-round, but it's that they're really going to key in, especially when you find December, late November, December food sources. them, they're going to key in on them at that time heavy, and the reason for that is because usually if they're keying in on a food source here in December, late November, whatever, usually it's because these are not food sources anymore. There's no food there, so there's nothing for the deer to eat, so they have to key in on these areas here. That is invaluable to know that going forward as you learn more about hunting and stuff. It's just invaluable. I talk about it in my timing course, my timing and hunting matured pressured bucks, or whatever the name of the course is, and I talk about it in my mapping course. It is absolutely invaluable. You cannot, I can't explain how important that is. If you have that information, if you have it mapped on a map, there's several different mapping softwares. I have a guy sent me one, huntingmap.com or something like that. It was a pretty cool one. I'm going to check it out more. I've got to do a video for him. But he's a pretty good hunter. He's killed a lot of big deer, and he's got some good land and stuff to hunt on. But I'm going to look over an area for him, and he was using this, and it was a pretty good program. I liked it, but it's invaluable. Map this stuff out, and keep in mind that if the deer are feeding here in December, they're 90% chance they're going to be feeding back there in December the next year. Okay, if they're feeding here in November, 90% chance they're going to be feeding there the following year in November. October, their patterns change a lot throughout the year, and even sometimes from one day to the next big time, their pattern can change a lot from Monday to Tuesday, or from Monday to Tuesday, and then from Tuesday to Thursday they may be feeding back on what they were feeding on Monday. But from December to December, it doesn't change a lot. November, they're going to feed, for instance, oak trees in your area are going to drop the same time every year within a week every single year. The farmer's going to harvest the crops every year within a pretty short time, every year within a few weeks of from one year to the next. He's going to plant his crops about the same time every year. All this stuff takes place every year at the same time, and it's all because of the seasonal changes, spring, summer, fall, and winter. Okay, and deer go through them patterns every year, and they can't change it. They can't run to the grocery store. They have to eat what's available to them, and they're localized in about a square mile, which this isn't a square mile, but just to give you an idea, they're going to stay within a 200 to 600 acre area 95% of their life, or 98% of their life probably. Once they disperse, they set up a home range, they're not going to leave their area very much. Just not going to happen. I would say 98-99% of the time they stay within that home range. So their food sources available from one year to the next, they have to have them. They have to use them. They don't have a choice. And that is invaluable to learn. Anyways, Nihad, I appreciate you letting me look at this. I hope it helps you out. If you have any questions or anything, shoot me an email. Anybody else that watched this video, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned something from it. And Nihad, I wish you best of luck when you go hunting, and I hope you can capitalize on a deer. And I know I done the other video for you, and you said you seen some deer and you couldn't get a shot at them. Hey, that's deer hunting, and that's, to me, is what makes it fun, is in times where, man, your heart really gets to pounding, and you don't get the deer. Now, obviously it's nice to get one from time to time, but I think if you'll stick with it, and I know we had talked about on the phone, you said you didn't have a lot of time to hunt because you were busy working, and I understand that's I think that's everybody's life. Mine, I work on a tree service as well, so I don't get to hunt as much as I'd like. I do get to hunt. I do hunt it quite a lot, but there's times I would rather be hunting than working. But that's part of it. So But stick in there, and you know, when you do have them times, I think you said you was going to be able to hunt a few days this weekend here after Christmas. Stick in there and hunt hard, and I think you may you may have some good luck. So I wish you luck, and I hope you kill one. I hope you can kill a big one. I know there's some big deer in your in this area here. There's some bruiser deer. So, you know, maybe you can kill you a monster buck, and that'd be something to be proud of. And if you do, any deer you kill, send me a picture of it. I'd like to see it, and I wish you luck. Have a good day, and bye-bye.